Okay, I'm thinking that Captain Gringo got us fixed up. So there's about 15 minutes. Skype is not letting me into host the network here for some reason. And tried to upgrade and it failed. So thanks, Captain Gringo, to the rescue. Look, I just come cross country on the bus, got back home here to Arkansas this afternoon. And man, that was a long trip. But it usually is. And nevertheless, an adventure. Yeah, I love that part of it. Meeting people and talking and engaging folks. So, oh man, this sucks because I had exactly 2 hours of Larkin Rose from here in Las Vegas. Thanks, Walter. So I am out on the airwaves now. Well, I guess I'll just throw a little improv out here. I had it all planned out. And lo and behold, my first recording, which was a solid 2 hours, was somehow it's not retrievable. I swear it's a conspiracy. Computers are against me. It's Skynet or something like that. Man, I had a good time. I did. I always do. Like I said, let's see. Where am I? Yeah. Then, so I've got my backup. I shot some. Also shot some video, which I was going to upload to YouTube in clips under 15 minutes. And let's see here. A message from. Yes, please. Yeah. Come back in an hour and 45 minutes, Gringo. Maybe you can go clean the bathroom or take out the trash. No, I appreciate it. Yeah, and then Drew and Chuck will be coming on. Yeah, I'm burnt out. But, like I said, did I tell you it was a good time? Wait, another message. So this is just Run Along Radio, and cool. Thanks, Gringo. Run along. Should I tell some stories? I might be too tired to be funny, though. Maybe I should just play and cheat everybody out of 15 minutes of Larkin Rose, and maybe you could then be enticed to go to my YouTube channel, or should I say, yeah, you'd have to come to mine. You could listen to it all at one time on UCY.TV YouTube user, and I can upload the rest of these. So maybe I'll do that instead of mumbling. And next week when I'm rested, I'll tell everybody about my trip. And it was a lot of fun, and I did engage a lot of people in conversation, as you may imagine, that I myself would do that. Let me give some shouts out to everybody. Thanks for everybody listening, and those that will be listening, and to everybody here at UCY.TV. So is what I'm going to have to do. This is I'm out of the closet broadcast because as circumstances may be. Yeah, thanks, Walter. Long story. Anyways, here I go. I'm bugging out. I have to go to another location, and I got a monitor from there to play this. So this ought to be fun. Anyways, y'all keep listening. I'll pop back in. Let me try this volume. Should have advanced just a little bit more. Let me try to advance. I probably am. What I do? No, that's where we need to be at. It's the right spot. Okay, Larkin Rose in Las Vegas, Nevada. Tell me if I need more volume.
You get some just appreciate here. You just watch a YouTube video. The more interesting, useful things is when we get back and forth. People can ask stuff and throw the discussion in whatever direction they want. But I usually start with fairly short monologues so people get the general gist of what I'm saying, and so we don't have to discussion, debate, the terminology of what we're even talking about. So I'm just going to dive in. A guy shows up at your front door, and he says, "Hey, I'm new in town, and could I have a few minutes of your stay so I can tell you about the services I provide?" And you say, "I'm kind of busy." And he says, "It'll only take a few minutes, and I promise you that when I'm done, you will be sure that you simply cannot live without the services I provide." And you say, "It's going to be a waste of time, but what services do you provide?" And he says, "Well, we decide on a case-by-case basis what services we think you need. Now, maybe it's we give you food, maybe it's we help you with housing, maybe it's we help your neighbor, maybe it's we help protect you, but we decide what services you need." And you're already kind of suspicious, like, why would I let you decide what services I need? You say, "Well, that was kind of fishy. Well, how much does this cost?" And he says, "Well, we decide as we go along on a regular basis how much we're going to charge you for it. And the price may fluctuate here and there." And you say, "Okay, I don't think I'm interested. It sounds too big. I think it's always been too for me, or what it's going to cost me, so no thanks." He says, "Okay, maybe I wasn't clear. We don't ask your permission exactly. You have to pay us the price that we say it's going to cost you for the services that we're going to decide to provide you." And you say, "What do you mean I have to? I don't have to pay your services." Well, there will be adverse consequences if you don't. What do you just mean my life won't be good if I don't hire you, or are you threatening me? Well, I don't call it a threat. We don't all work together for the common good, things don't work as well. So we can't let people not pull their weight and not do their fair share of making me. If you pay things will be okay. Like you're threatening me and it's like usually. She's right door. It was rude of me to just say you have to pay for my. I get to decide what services we provide. Well, no. We will still decide what services we provide. If I decide the price I'm going to pay, no. We decide the price and you still have to pay. Well, that's the same. Will show up here at your front door, and you can choose. Now, if you don't like the way it goes that month, next month we will come back and you can choose the other one who will decide what services we provide and how much it will cost you. So that really means that you're in charge. You're our boss. Your services, you don't even tell me what services are. You say what it might be. Like, do you from other people? No, we don't guarantee that. Do you guarantee that you're not going to do things I don't even like? Never mind not doing what I want. Might you do things I'm morally opposed to? Really, I would like. And I'm still not in charge. Give me a choice between two people robbing you. Oh, come on, don't call it robbing you. We're serving you. We're representing you. In fact, we are you. Because we're all organized services. And you the situation. Maybe you're not clear on how this works. We're serving you, we're representing you, you are the customers, and you're the boss, and we do what you want. And all debt upholds our end of the bargain. And by living in this neighborhood, consequences for that. So you're the one causing trouble. That they're going along with it. So when you don't go along with it, you're the problem. You get out of your responsibility to participate. Here's the point. If that happened, if that you say is criminal, but downright insane. For someone to tell you, I'm going to decide what services you need, I'm going to decide the price, and you don't have a choice whether to support it, whether to pay for it, whether to go along with it. You want to be coerced into this, you don't want to be forced to pay for it when you don't even know what the services are. But let me put it this way. Aren't there some of your neighbors that you may not like their habits, you may not like what they do? Suggest to us things about your neighbor that you say, I don't want you terrorizing. It sounds like a mafia. I don't want you terrorizing my neighbors. Leave my neighbors alone. Even the ones that don't consider life. Leave them alone too. Are you sure? I mean, we don't have to do it too directly, but we could kind of take some of their money and get you something nice. Wouldn't you like that? No, you're just being the mafia. Leave them alone. Don't rob my neighbors. These are the ones that I don't particularly get along with. Don't rob them either. He says, well, okay, but I got to tell you, not all of your neighbors said that. And so you're going to have to pay for some of the things that they want that you might not want, you might be morally opposed to, but you don't really have a choice because they went along with it. They asked us. We're representing them because they actually asked us to take your money to pay for things they want. So pay us. Again, you find door things. Again, the point is that in that context, everybody recognizes that the guy who shows up at your door and says that is a bad guy. He is acting uncivilized. He is not playing the way decent, moral human beings play. It's a threat. It's extortion. It's the mafia. Now, everybody recognizes that in that setting. You know, the admittedly silly hypothetical example I just gave. The people come back to nobody's going to do that. No private person is going to come and say, I will decide what services to give you and I will decide the price and I'll hurt you if you don't pay. Why is it that just about 100% of people think that's ridiculous and say, no, that will be okay? And almost 100% of people believe the exact same lie, as long as they are taught from when they're really young, that this group is allowed to, because they're called the United States Congress. And when they say, we decide how much you're going to pay, and we decide what services to provide you, we don't guarantee anything. We don't guarantee food, we don't guarantee protection, and we can change the price whenever we want. We call it tax rates. And you can come to us as often as you want and tell us what you hope you will do. We don't care. We'll do what we're going to do anyway. You can come back. You can say, can I please not pay you as much? And we'll say, no, you have to pay us more. And we'll call it raising tax rates. If you say, well. And if you resist and say, this is focused, they don't have the right to do this, your neighbors will often say, you're messing up the game. Because that guy who showed up at your front door who's acting like the mafia, you're not playing along. I play along. He shows up in my front door, I give him my money and let him boss me around and do whatever he says. That makes me good. It makes you bad. Now, who on earth would say that if it wasn't the government that we've been trained to recognize as a rightful authority? There's just some guy off the street. Nobody would take pride in going along with the random guy who shows up at their door and tries to rule them. Which is why we are trained when we're very small to imagine it's okay when it's certain gangs that have really big buildings that look really fancy and they do big rituals, so it must be legitimate. And that's the only reason we accept it. It's the same reason little kids believe in Santa Claus, because they heard it when they were really young and they heard it over and over again. Most kids, some didn't. And they think, well, everybody believes this got to be true. The belief in government is provably no more rational than the belief in Santa Claus. That was all the adults still did. The amazing thing is that it is not that people naturally want to be dominated or want government or want to be robbed. They don't want that guy who shows up at the front door. They don't say, I'm so glad you're here to force things on me and make me pay for whatever you say I need and not even give me a choice and threaten to hurt me if I don't pay for whatever you decide to do at whatever price you decide to do it. Normal people would never go along with that, and there's a reason for that. Normal people are anarchists until they are trained to imagine that a certain guy, if he shows up at your door and says, I'm with the IRS, he doesn't say I'm with some business. I'm with the IRS, or I'm with the FBI, or I'm with the police. State, federal, local, it doesn't matter. We are trained to believe that certain gangs, it's okay if they do this utterly insane and immoral thing. Your neighbor did the same thing, made the same deal for the same threat. Nobody would accept it as legitimate. Now, the title of this talk is Government is Not Your Friend. And some people will assume that, well, government does corrupt things and does bad things. They're not at all that point. That guy who shows up at your front door, even if he does something nice to you, he brings you a sandwich after he demands money from you and threatens you. That doesn't make the arrangement okay. That guy will never be your friend, and that guy is never going to show up to your front door with your best interest at heart. I mean, how much more obvious can that be? If somebody comes up to you that you don't know and says, I want permission to control your life and take your money and interfere with your interactions with other human beings, do you really believe that this stranger is doing it because he wants what's best for you? Of course not. And nobody would think otherwise if it was just some guy in the street. But we're trained to imagine, or at least delusionally hope, that the people in government are controlling us and stealing our money for our benefit. But it's utterly insane when people say, well, that guy sounds so sincere. We're not the right person. He really sounds like he cares. If somebody cares about you, they will. To imagine an exception to ever think otherwise. And the funny thing is a lot of people will say, well, I'm scared of the market and free exchange because I'm not sure we'll handle this right. So I want government, not the guy who shows up and says, here's my price for this service, you can take it or leave it, it might hurt you either way. To be scared of him, but not to be scared of the guy who says, all the separate services and all the separate prices, you have to take it or I hurt you. To think that that guy has your interest at heart more than the other guy is just loony. But the trick they use to make anybody buy it is they say, well, how about if we use it on other people? Like, I know you're not going to come to me and say, please boss me around. Can we do that? But wouldn't you like it if we could control your neighbor and make him not have those habits? Yeah, he drinks a little too much. We'll make it so he can't drink. He might play his music too loud, or he might have a car. He has a car in Spanish years and years more expensive. That's not really fair. So we'll take some of his money and give it to you, and you can get a better car, and he'll have to sell his car. The temptation to use power to control the other guy is why 99% of people fall for the lie of government. The guy shows up at the door and wants to boss you around. You say, I don't want you to boss me around. But if they say, well, we can take your neighbor's stuff, we can boss him around, we can make him be the way you know he should be. And everybody who votes falls for that. Everybody who votes falls for that. That I'm going to vote for the guy who's going to fund what should be funded. And how does that work? Well, he's going to take money from that. Then you can take my money too. But hey, it happens to be what I want to have happen, whether it's helping the poor or having police force, whatever it is. You know darn well, the guy you're voting for isn't only going to tax you, he's going to tax the other people who disagree with you. So when everybody runs to the voting booth and tries to get their guy to win, they're not pressing that button or flipping the lever, hoping the other guy will win. They want their guy to win because they want their values and preferences and what they care about forced on the other guys. And the guy who shows up at your front door, that's the only reason he has any power, is because it is so tempting to fall for that lie that, hey, we can make the world better, we can make it where it should be, if you give me the power to control them and to make them hand over money to take care of the poor, to pay for defense, or whatever you think is important, just give me the power and I will make your neighbor behave the way you know he ought to. And as long as people fall for that, the whole world loses except the ruling class. And the only way we ever get out of that is when all the decent people recognize that government cannot be your friend. The guy at the front door, in that arrangement, that can never be your friend, even if he gives you stolen loot from your neighbor. Yes, your wallet may look better because government took somebody else's money and gave it to you. That does not help society any more than you going to your neighbor and robbing him yourself, which would at least be honest. The people in government, when they are giving handouts, when they are giving, we're going to help the poor, we're going to do Social Security and help the retired, we're going to do this. Don't ever imagine for a moment that somebody who would force their agenda on you is doing it for your benefit. When you get a check from the government, there's one reason you're getting that. They are buying your loyalty with somebody else's money. And when we fall for that, we are the ones giving them power, not only over the neighbors that we want to violate control, but over ourselves. If you and your neighbor, if a guy comes to your front door and then comes to his front door, you both say, yeah, I want you to deal. Take more of his money. Tell him what to do. And your neighbor saying the same thing about you. No, make him from the things I care about. Here's this charity I want him to get to, and here's this program I want him to fund. It puts us at war with each other forever, and the only way out of that is for people to recognize that that guy who shows up at your front door is the enemy of humanity. And what every decent, moral human being has to do is say, go away, I don't want you controlling me, and I don't want you controlling my neighbor. And even if my neighbor is obnoxious, I don't particularly like him, we don't get along, we hardly ever talk. If you try to rob him, even if you say it's for something I want, I'm on his side, not yours. When that happens, that is the beginning of freedom, and it is the end of government. Now the concept, the term anarchy, makes people freak out. Because a lot of people have been trained to mix the two meanings together. One meaning is chaos and mayhem. The other meaning is what it actually literally means is rule by no one. Anarchy is like monarchy is rule by one. Anarchy is rule by none. Rule by no one. It doesn't mean chaos and mayhem. It doesn't mean Molotov cocktails through windows. It means there isn't the guy at the front door bossing everybody around and forcing control people's lives. And that's all it means. And it's so funny to me, both funny and frustrating, that people have this idea in their head that anarchy means we're going to mess up society. We're not going to be organized and we're not going to cooperate. All it means is we're not going to go along with the guy who shows up at the front door and says, I want to control everybody. You get to cooperate with your neighbor and trade stuff and organize whatever you want. 2 people can organize, 2 billion people can organize. The one thing you can't do is say, we have special rights. We get to force other people into our organization. You get to force other people to pay for what we care about. And that's the only thing that anarchy removes from society, is the illusion that certain people have the right to initiate violence. And that's all. And it's so amazing to me that the authoritarian propaganda has convinced so many people that chaos is what's going to result from telling those people, no, you don't get to violently control us. Imagine the lunacy of the logic that we are trained to believe, that telling that group of people you don't get to violently dominate us, that is going to lead to bloodshed and mayhem. And even if you open a history book, and I love to do this, people say, oh, if there weren't government, everything would be way worse. If we didn't accept that guy at the front door, for some reason we'd be killing and eating each other. That would just be utter chaos. And I say, okay, well, let's play a game. You start citing some examples of like large-scale injustices and murder that resulted from a lack of authority, also known as anarchy, and I'll start listing some that resulted from authority. Mao Zedong, 42 million dead. Joseph Stalin, 20 or 30 million dead. The Nazi regime, Pol Pot, every authoritarian empire. And despite the fact that literally more than 200 million human beings have been murdered by their own government, not including war, you can pile on the war statistics on top of that, people still believe that government, the thing responsible for that, is what keeps us civilized. It's utterly insane, which is why they have to start teaching it to us when we're just barely old enough to understand the words. Because if you grew up in a free society and that guy showed up at your front door, everybody would not only recognize his suggestions as immoral and stupid, they would think he was insane. Wouldn't you think someone was insane if he was a normal person who showed up and said, I'm going to control you, I will design good services you get, I'm going to make you pay for them, and I'm going to hurt you if you don't go along with it. Like, okay, you're dangerous, and you're out of your mind. Well, you have to choose between two of them. Now it's okay, because now it's democracy. And now it's great, and that's what we have to spread around the world, the idea that if me and Baba show up at your front door, let you decide which one of us is going to violently dominate you, that means you're in charge. That's just as good as being free. And nobody in that context would fall for that. It's not the same as being free. That's choosing which robber is going to rob me. And yet, millions and millions and millions of people are genuinely, profoundly, emotionally attached to democracy because they think it equals freedom and civilization. And it's the exact opposite. And again, the beauty of the situation, the heart of the situation is the mass injustice that people not only go along with, but they vote for, thinking this is the system, this is what we need. Again, that guy at the front door says, you won't possibly be able to live without my services. How many people really truly believe that human society cannot live without a ruling class, without government? It's a lot of people, which means they really believe that, like, we in this room could not possibly interact on a peaceful basis without that guy showing up who gets to threaten us all and steal our money. I don't see that guy here, and so far we seem to be getting along pretty well. But we're trained to imagine an exception, and that's why there's actually hope. Because in any other context, we all recognize the excuses for government as completely insane. We have to be trained when we're really young to see that in this case it's necessary. Because they have constitutions, and they have elections, they have these really big buildings, and they have lots of law books, and they sound so official, and you watch CNN, and they say big words, and they dress in suits, so it must be legitimate. It isn't just some loony at the front door saying you do what they or hurt you. It looks so professional. It looks like, the inauguration. It looks like the crowning of a king. There's a reason for that. The divine right of kings was a little bit too stupid for people to fall for anymore. They changed it to divine right of politicians. Most people still fall for it. And if you do big rituals, it must be real. There must be something to this. They wouldn't do all this just based on made-up power that they just claim to have. Yeah, they would. Yeah, they did. And the only reason it works is because we fall for it. But again, the beauty is that people are naturally anarchists. And that doesn't mean that you're volunteers. It means they want voluntary interaction. They don't want the guy showing up and saying, I'm your master, I'm going to boss you around. They want to be able to go to a supermarket and say, I want that and that, and I would have bought that, but it's a little bit too expensive, so I'll just have these. And then you go to the counter and you do a voluntary transaction. You didn't have to buy anything. They didn't have to sell you anything. You did the deal. They get a little bit of money. You get some food or whatever you bought. You go away. Thank you. I want to break the death there. And guess what? There's a word for that. It's called anarchism. The more specific term for it is voluntarism. And a lot of people say you should use voluntarism and not anarchism because that word is scary. And to a certain extent I agree, except usually if you start explaining voluntarism, someone will say, you mean like anarchism, no government? So I'll just start with the term that freaks them out and then explain why it shouldn't freak you out to say that guy at your front door, it's not okay. Naturally choose. That's not the form of interaction they naturally choose. They choose voluntarism, which is I want to attack my neighbor. I want him to attack me. I want us to get along. And I don't even like him. I just kind of avoid him and he'll avoid me, and that's okay. We don't attack each other. We don't care. If we like to deal with the people I like, and you can deal with the people he likes. Now, one scenario that I've done a bunch of times when I do longer events, I don't have time to do the in-depth version now, is I will say, imagine that the people in this room, we were on a boat or a plane or whatever, crashed into a deserted island, we're it. We're all the people in the world right now. There's no authority, there's no 911, there's no cops, there's no courts, there's no representatives to call. And I say, imagine this is the scenario, and most of us don't know the rest of us. And we don't know who we can trust. I mean, there may be a couple feds in here, and we nearly trust them. And so I say, well, what would we do? Imagine that we're it. There is no cop-out available to say, well, we'll have authority handle it. Well, there isn't any. We're just sitting on an island. We're just people. What do we do? And I would go through, in these events I did before, I would go through in detail the different scenarios. The first one is always, well, one guy said, well, I think we need leadership here. People say, okay, maybe, what do you mean? I mean, I'm in charge, I get to tell everybody what to do, and I get to hurt anybody who disobeys me. So I'll ask, who in this crowd would be for that? Nobody I've had yet for anybody to say, I'm for that. That's government. So in that setting, nobody I've ever met at these events has been in favor of government. When I say, well, how does somebody stand up and says, well, I happen to teach a course on survival, and I know how to build huts that actually keep the rain out. I know how to start a fire without. And if people want to help out, like, I'll help you build your shelter if you help me build mine, and we can get a team together. Anybody want to voluntarily do that? I've never met anybody who objected to that. Now, some people might say, I can build my own hut. I mean, you guys go right ahead. I don't need to do that. I can build my own, but yeah, I'm fine. Why on earth would I object to people getting along voluntarily doing it? What is the term for that? It's called anarchism. Which means that through these events, everyone is against government and everyone is in favor of anarchy. Anarchy, that scary word. In other words, voluntarism. Getting along peacefully without a violent, dominating authority trying to forcibly run the show. So people are naturally what they need to be. And this is why there's hope. Because we don't need people to learn some complicated solution. You know, it's so easy for people to look at politics and go, well, I voted for that guy, 4 years later I voted for that guy, and everything keeps getting worse. And these people say really big words, and they must know more than I do, and, you know, we can't possibly handle it. So it's got to be up to the political class. You know, they have all these rituals. They must know more than us. They must be more informed. We should just leave it up to them. And it always gets worse, but people fall for it because they think you have to be really, really smart to run things. That's one of my favorite terms is when people say, well, we need somebody to run things. Well, that's really darn vague. Do you need somebody to tell you how to grocery shop? Well, no, I can do that. Okay, how to go to the store. You know, what are the things that you need to be run? In what way do you need to be run by this guy who needs to run things? Well, it's not me, it's other people. Okay, well, every individual says it's not them, it's other people, which something doesn't add up with that, because it's no individual, it's always all the other people other than each individual, which doesn't make any sense. But people speak in these vague terms, like somebody has to be in charge, or somebody has to run things, and often people will say, well, I know you're against government, but I think people need to be organized. And I say, okay, me too. And we need to cooperate. Yep. And people have been trained not to recognize the one thing that makes government government, which is the right to violently rule. You can still cooperate, you can still organize. I'm not saying let every man for himself scatter. In fact, that's one of the things I ask when I do this scenario of the island. The first thing is, who wants one boss in charge who makes us do whatever he wants? Nobody likes that. Who wants every man to scatter, every man for himself? Nobody's ever said, yeah, I'm for that. And yet people associate not having the master with every man for himself. And people will say, if you're against government, you just want everybody like living in like a hermit in the woods. How do you get from, I don't want someone violently dominating you, to, I want you living on your own out in the woods? The only reason they make that connection is because they've been trained to imagine connections that don't make any sense at all. And they speak in this vague terminology because I say they, I did it for years and years and years. I hate to admit it because it's really embarrassing. But they talk about somebody being in charge. There have to be rules. That's one of my favorite ones. Well, what? They just, like, rules just appear somewhere? Or we need law. Well, what is law? But it's the rules people have to live by. Well, like what? Like, don't attack each other. All right, I like that one. You just ruled out government. Well, they get to it. And the funny thing is, everybody knows the rules that matter. We don't have to teach any complicated philosophy. And that's why what I say is I don't actually teach a philosophy. What I try to do is take one lie in people's heads and get them to see that doesn't match who they are. Government works against you. That lie is your enemy. It goes against your values. It goes against your virtues and against your goodness. It tricks you as a good person into condoning and advocating and funding evil. Because you've been tricked into believing, and I was tricked into believing, that if it's done in a certain way, with certain rituals and elections and constitutions, then it's okay. And I never realized for years and years that my devout, well-intentioned political action was fueling evil. And I'm not exaggerating. Because advocating that your neighbor be violently robbed is evil. And we all recognize that, except in the context of politics. Well, most of us here recognize it even at that time. But most of the rest of the world think, I vote for Congress to pass a law, and there's a tax on this, and then you have to pay it or else bad things happen to you. That's okay, that's legitimate, that's law and order, that's civilization. Without that, we would all be violations. So these are not things we fundamentally believe. These are things that fundamentally go against our values and our priorities and the way we want to interact with other human beings, which is why it takes so much training for us to accept things that go directly against who we are inside, what we believe in, what we actually want. Because if you ask a good person, like, describe your ideal society, nobody says everyone's violently dominated. If you meet somebody who says that, run the other way. Stay as far away as you possibly can. That's good. If they want to be violently dominating, you know, if they want to go to some S&M, whatever, be my guest. Just don't tell me I have to go. But people, again, the reason there is hope, and so many people say, oh, dude, you know, you look back at thousands of years of history, and it's violent domination, this war, and this group of tyrants and this group of tyrants each send upon us to kill each other for years and years, and then whoever wins, there's still a tyrant in charge. You know, the lines might change between tyrant territories, but there's still a tyrant in charge on both sides, and nasty things keep happening. We keep having war, we keep having conflict. But oh well, I guess that's how it is. The beauty is that isn't how it is. And the only reason I have any hope, I mean, I remember being in political action, and I can remember to the point I thought, I know, if I'm being honest with myself, I know that political action cannot fix this. I can go out there and say, rah, rah, for the Libertarian Party, I can rah, rah, against them, and we need that. But I know voting will not result in freedom. And this was back when I believed in government. But if I was honest, I had to say, this isn't going to work. I don't know why I'm throwing all this effort in. The people out there, these don't want this. They play the game. They go along with it. Why do I think that screaming about this for 4 more years is going to suddenly make everybody choose freedom? And so I was really bummed out, thinking, you know, I can holler from the rooftops, oh, it was great I am about stuff, but we're just going to lose. We'll have tyranny forever. The beauty is we won't. Because to fix the world, we don't have to fix government. If we have to fix government to fix the world, we're doomed. It's nothing to fix. What we have to do, and we don't even have to do anything to it. We don't have to overthrow it. We don't have to vote in a new one. If everybody whose door gets knocked on by that guy says, I don't want you controlling me and I don't want you controlling my neighbor, that guy is just a wandering idiot. That is what the U.S. Congress should be. Wandering idiots who say, can't we be in charge? And 300 million people saying, no, I don't want you in charge of me, I don't want you in charge of my neighbor, leave us all alone. And that is all that has to happen. And it's so easy to imagine government as this massive, powerful thing. Oh, it has all these resources. Yeah, it has it because we give it to them. And we give it to them, because most of us think we have an obligation to. If we all looked at the guy's front door and said, go away, you're not getting any of my money, they wouldn't have any money. The politicians don't reach into their own wallets to pay for a tank or an aircraft carrier. They reach into our wallets. And 300 million of us said, you don't get to reach into our wallets. We don't want that. They couldn't do anything. Well, they're big and powerful and they have the military. Well, last time I checked, the congressmen aren't the ones driving tanks around. Soldiers are. And if the soldiers figure out, I don't have an obligation to do what that guy says, and I'm responsible for my own actions, then you get the sort of liberal hippie version, which is still true, but is what if they had a war and nobody came? That's what universal acceptance of voluntarism would be. One group of tyrants says, we're going to claim that group of land, go invade, and all the people in that piece of dirt say, who are you? You're going to go away. And the other group of tyrants says, we have to invade that. And all the people there says, no, we don't. We're getting along just fine. Please go away. All of their power. Congress doesn't show up on a battlefield. Congress doesn't fund anything. Congress doesn't produce any value, any wealth, anything that does anybody any good. All the powers because we give it to them because we go along with it. And if that goes away, they really are a paper tiger. Not even paper. They're an invisible nothing that we hallucinate into being powerful. And you can very easily do an analogy of, there's some sort of primitive tribe and some nasty guy who knows technology shows up and he goes, I'll do a few tricks and he can go ooh and ah. He says, I'm a god and you must give me sacrifices and give me money and worship and do all that. And they do it thinking that he really is all-powerful. And the thing is, he is all-powerful if they don't think he is, because they all obey him and they enforce his commands because they think he's powerful. They make it true by imagining it to be true. But the day they all go, oh, you just have some gadgets, we don't quite know how they work. You're just one guy. You could hurl you in the volcano if you felt like it. You're just one guy. Then he isn't powerful anymore. The exact same thing is true of every government on earth, including the nastiest authoritarian regimes you can think of. Because their victims and their enforcers are the ones who gave them that power. And if they ever wake up and realize that the guy knocking at the front door is not their friend, they can take that power away. And all the politicians will be is narcissistic, sociopathic lunatics mumbling to themselves in the corner about how important they are. So you don't have to do anything to them. Nobody will even hear, nobody will care. It's not for them. It must be unpleasant to live such a deluded life, so well, go do whatever you want. So there is hope for humanity. If you rely on politics, there isn't the slightest shred of hope in the world. But there is hope because all people have to do is outgrow a particular lie. And they already have all the virtue they need, all the wisdom they need. I'm all for people being even nicer and even more intelligent. We don't even need that to get a world that is 100 times better than we have now if they will just let go of that one lie called authority and government and just say, all right, now we're just people, what do we do? Because most people, when that's the question, they think, well, I don't want to be in violent conflict. Like, how do we cooperate in a way that isn't that? And the funny thing is that when people start to think about a world without a government, that's their first concern. How will we have a world without violent conflict if we do away with that thing that's responsible for most of the violent conflict in the world? And it is so backwards. And again, I believed it for years and years. I thought government was a civilizing influence on society. And now that I recognize what it is, I'm really ashamed I ever believed that. And I think, how did I ever believe that? And the only reason I did is because since I was a little kid, I heard it from everybody around me. Well, this is democracy, this is great, yada, yada, yada. So I accepted it just the way kids accept Santa Claus. The difference is when kids get old enough, parents say, well, Santa Claus isn't real. What we need is to tell all the kids, the little ones and the big ones, government isn't real either. And then it's gone, and it has no power. So, I can keep ranting at it tonight. If anybody has a question or a comment or
I've got to be the one to ask. Who built the road?
It's actually thank you. When you use the example of the island, I will ask that. Like, let's say somebody says, I think it might be important if we want to get rescued to have a big fire. We should probably have it at the top of the mountain so people can see it from farther away. I would like to be able to pass up there. Right now it's jungle. Now, who is in favor of, I get to force everybody to build a path up there? Everybody says, no. Well, who would chip in some of their effort to help build a path? And some people say yes, and some people say no, and some people say I'm more concerned with this or whatever. So in the island scenario, nobody chooses government as the solution to the question about the roads. And it's true of every other question you bring up. And I would go through things about protection. Like we have one guy who gets caught stealing stuff from other people. And this was one of the most interesting things that happened in these discussions, is I put the scenario of, this guy was caught red-handed stealing stuff from other people. And fish that somebody else caught. And he was caught stealing and he admitted it. What do we do about that? And that question, and then I would just kind of let the discussion go free-for-all for a while. That question is so revealing because it shows why people want authority and why you really, really, really shouldn't have authority. But why they want it is they want someone else to deal with that inconvenient stuff. Just call 911 and turn them over to the cops and don't even have to think about it because it's uncomfortable to think, here's a human being. We have him in custody. I don't even particularly like that. Now we have to think, how do we make him not steal fish? I don't want to, lop his head off for stealing a fish. That's a little harsh. But what do we do? And I'll have people actually have discussion. Well, what do you do? And some people will say, well, first of all, I was talking to him and finding out why he thinks he needs to do that. Is it just somebody he's trying to fish, maybe? Or is there some other psychological thing? And other people are like, well, if that doesn't work, we need some sort of disincentive, like, I don't know, climb to a tree for an hour. Every time you get caught catching a fish, that's pretty humiliating. That might have some concern. And whatever the direction the discussion goes, the people's priority are always twofold. Stop him from hurting others and minimize the harm to him. People don't say, whack his head off. Because they know he's a human being. We want to be as nice to him as we can while making him be nice to us. Government doesn't ever do that. The government solution. Well, this guy's caught stealing a fish, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to steal a bunch of your stuff and force you to build a cage for me that I will put him in. I will then steal your fish to feed him while he's in the cage that I forced you to build. Who's for that? I have yet to meet anybody who says, yeah, do that. That's great. But that is the government solution to crime. Oh, he got caught stealing. Well, we're going to tax you, which means we're going to steal your money to build a giant cage, put him in it, and then we're going to keep stealing your money to feed him. Nobody would ever suggest a solution that stupid except in the context of government. And that's government's answer to almost every crime. So anyway, I'll cut my branch off.
So what ends up, I know you kind of detailed the stealing concept, but I mean really what ends up kind of being the idea for, we're sociopaths in every society, you know what I mean? How do we do it? Like what comes up with that?
Yeah, couldn't hear the question. It was basically, what do we do about sociopaths? Because there are sociopaths. Not everybody's nice.
We elect them in public office.
Yeah, we elect them in public office. That's what we're doing now. That's what's too great. But it's a real question. And a lot of people assume that when I say I'm against all government, they say, well, you must trust everybody. Because that would only work if everybody was nice. They say, I don't trust everybody. And I'm not saying you don't have the right to defend yourself. Yes, there are actual sociopaths, a pretty high percentage of them. Thankfully, a lot of them are functioning sociopaths. They figured out that voluntary interaction even benefits them better. They wouldn't care if they harmed you, but you might do nasty things to them if they did, so they play the game the way civilized people with morals do. But some of them don't. What do we do about that? Again, in the island scenario, what I'd love to do is show that almost everybody already knows the answer, and I don't have to give it to them. So there is a sociopath on the island. This isn't just a fish thief. This is someone actually sneaking around murdering people. And he killed a few, and we caught him. Like, holy smokes, you're evil and completely whacked out. You're actually committing murder for fun, apparently. What do we do? And a few people, including me in that scenario, would say, I just kill him. By myself, without a law, without a badge, I believe I would be morally justified in taking his life. And I think it would suck to have to kill another human being. That would be horrendously horrible. The only thing worse would be letting him kill another innocent. And if somebody says, wait, I have a way to promise that he can't ever hurt anybody else, and I'll make sure he's fed. Like, if you can convince me that you can do that, 100% guarantee you won't hurt anybody else, and you're not going to rob anybody else to feed him, I'm all the way sure that the innocent are protected. He's not a top priority for me. And again, in normal context, people understand the right to self-defense and organizing for self-defense. Maybe there's a guy that you have to call, and he's a guy who has guns or whatever. You're on the island with no guns. He has a spear, and he's big and tough, and really fast, and he's good at fighting. And he says, hey, if other people will give me a little bit of their food, you can call on me if there's a dispute. Now, when I show up, I'm just a guy. I'm not authority. I don't have a badge. I'm just a human with the same rights as you. I just might be a little bit more equipped at defending you from the attacker than you are. So it's a matter of ability, not right. I'm still just a human being. And the day I show up and say, I'm taxing you, you have to pay for my services, you have the right to whack my head off. Stop me from doing that, because I'm still just a person. I don't suddenly acquire the right to commit aggression. And so most people on most of these questions figure out, well, we could do this. And we got to be on the lookout. And reputation is a big thing in small communities that, if it comes out that guy is a crook and he swindles people, or he's actually dangerous, he's done some really creepy things that we think he might actually be dangerous, we may not have proof yet, and word of mouth spreads and everybody knows, all right, beware of that guy. Be ready to protect yourself from him. These are solutions that people can naturally figure out on their own. And the reason so many people put their questions in the form of what will be done about, what they mean is, what's the central plan for that? And it takes so much thought and mental exercise, and it did for me, to get to the point to realize there shouldn't actually be a central solution. Because the central solution means one guy comes up with a plan and forces it on the rest of us. I don't know what the other 7 billion people are going to do if there's a murder in their town. I can say what I want to do, but who cares? I'm that one guy over there. I'm not going to be emperor of anarchy. I'm not going to rule the world. I'm not going to be in your neighborhood. I'm probably not going to do anything about the murder in your neighborhood. I can give you suggestions of what I think about it, like don't punish people unless you're really sure they actually did it, and don't go overboard on the punishment, but do make sure there aren't future victims and things like that. But people are so used to hearing the centralized authoritarian solution. Well, here's my plan for how I'm going to solve the problem of poverty or crime or this or that or the other thing, and it's always based on, first, I keep all of your money. And then I wrote a law that controls everybody, and then I, out of the benevolence of my heart, violently change my agenda and fix the world. And we've had thousands of years of that, resulting in hundreds of millions of deaths. Murders, I should say, not just deaths, not just actually intentional killing of innocent human beings. And what people need to do is step into the uncomfortable zone, which says, we're now the big people, we're the grown-ups. We're not little kids in the classroom who can say, teacher, Johnny's bothering me. You say, all right, we're it. We're all there is. We're the top level. We're responsible human beings. We on our own have to figure out how to deal with things, and each of us are completely responsible for our own actions. None of us can say, I was just following orders. It doesn't work in an anarchist society. There cannot be Nazis in an anarchist society. There cannot be dirty cops saying, well, I didn't make the law, I'm just enforcing it, because everybody would say, you're the one doing it. You're the one responsible for what you're doing right now. Nobody beating me over the head saying, well, the law or something made this happen. You made it happen. And people only buy that excuse now because they believe in authority and law and legislation. If they let go of that, yes, it's uncomfortable to have to be responsible for your own action and actually solve the problems of humanity. The good news is, if you don't imagine will always be better than the solutions government offers, which are always based on starting by robbing everybody and finally controlling innocent people.
Yeah, I was going to say, with the situation of, psychopath, sociopath on the island scenario, if word to get around, they'd be ostracized as somebody that does that, and anybody that they try it on again, it's like individual, will possess, learn a lesson, or will be disabled permanently eventually. And my actual question was, like in a scenario where government is wrong, why should we allow it? It's the individual societies or the nations that we have, like say North Korea, where people are slightly more indoctrinated, they're religious, and they have these weapons available. Say America collectively decides, screw government. They have this system where it's more organized. They have they want to attack us. We don't have a ruling government in place. I think that's where a lot of people are like, well, what about the other places that might not be so benevolent or smart about it?
Right. To try to sort of sum up that question, is basically the concern over, well, what about that scary other nation over there? If we're free over here, we don't have a government. What about that big nation over there that has a military or nukes and wants to invade us? Which is a perfectly rational concern. Any concern about there's a scary guy over there willing to hurt me, yeah, it would be nice if we had something we could do about it. The first part of my answer is, don't tell someone else that they're allowed to violently dominate you in the hopes that they'll stop some other person from violently dominating you, because that's what you think. So let's throw that one out the window. The second is, if we organize and cooperate knowing that we're all just human beings, just this country, there are about 100 million gun owners. Those 100 million gun owners, even if they were no more trained and organized in drill, would be undefeatable by any standing military in the world. You cannot conquer a land that has 100 million people who can kill you before you see them. It just doesn't work. And you can nuke them and commit mass murder, but you still can't conquer them. And lastly, I would say, and this is the thing that makes people scared who are really used to government, the best, most moral, most effective, most efficient form of large-scale defense is assassination.
Don't kill 1 million Germans because of what Hitler told them to do. Kill Hitler. Don't kill 1 million Chinese because of what Mao said. Kill Mao. And the funny thing is, it's so, I don't know why this didn't occur to me back when I was a statist. Why is it that all these nations will say, you're so evil, you tyrant over there, but don't worry, it's our standing policy that we never target the guy at the top.
Usually support them.
Yeah, and support them. And then we'll have a war, and millions will die on both sides, and we'll go and shake hands. Oh, Uncle Joe Stalin, yay. Yeah, I know you were our enemy like last week, but now we're our buddy, have half of Europe. And people think that's okay. And they don't recognize how bizarre it is. It's like, okay, here's this local gang with one guy charging they're committing mass murder, and we caught him, and ha-ha, now we have him under control. We're going to punish everybody except the main guy, and we let him go, and we give him some money, and help him rebuild his house, and we throw some up. But that's foreign policy, and there's an open standing policy of the U.S. We don't target the bad guy at the top who's actually responsible for starting this. We'll kill as many of his pawns as we feel like. We don't care about them. They're just they're livestock. But we don't go for the farmer because he's one of us. And if you go for the farmer, it's really cheap and really moral. Instead of telling the underlings in the pond, say, hey, you just openly said you were going to invade our homes where we live with your army. Well, I'm not going to sit around bothering to fight your soldiers one at a time when they come here. Let's have a bake sale. Raise $10 million. Whoever blows that guy's head off, who just gave the command that we be violently invaded, wins. And the beauty is, not only does it solve that particular invasion, but the next guy who gets in power goes, wow, they don't shoot my soldiers, they shoot me. Maybe we can have trade and open exchange and voluntary interaction. That's the thing, is if you remove government from the equation, the belief in government, even the nasty people are usually better off interacting voluntarily. In a free society, like people are going, evil, greedy businessman. If somebody can't get away with something sneaky, I don't care how selfish or greedy he is. Because in a free society where people know what's going on, the way to get rich is make something that other people want to buy. And if some nasty, greedy Scrooge makes something that I want to buy and gets filthy, stinking rich, I don't care. I benefited. Look, I got it. It was a benefit to me, or I wouldn't have bought it. And if he gets $1 bajillion, I don't mind. He isn't my boss. He can't force anything on me. So the evil, greedy businessman is not the problem unless there's a government that he can go to and say, by the way, can you use some of those laws to crush my competition and maybe give me a subsidy for the widgets I make, which is steal their money and give it to me whether they want to buy it or not. So even completely selfish, heartless people, and like I was saying before about the functional sociopaths, there are a lot of them, and most of them figure out what works better for them. They couldn't care less if you suffered and died, but it benefits them to play along like a civilized human being in the vast majority of cases, unless there's a government. Then it benefits them to try to be in the government. And they're always first in line. And people can want government to care about us, but if you put a job description that says, violently dominate and rob all the people you know, who do you think should apply for the job? It's people who like to violently dominate other people, and that's the job of government. And that's why sociopaths are always first in line. Wow, you're just going to put that much power in front of me, and all I have to do is say, I'll feel your pain. And it works. And people are like, wow, he really seems to care about me. Again, if he cared about you, he would say, can I please violently dominate you and steal your money? And people somehow keep trying to imagine that there's a way for government to be good. The guy who comes up and knocks on the door and says, can I violently dominate you? There's one way for him to be good, which is say, I want to violently dominate you. There's one way for government to be good is for it to stop being government. And if people say, well, what about a government that only protects us and only defends our rights? I say, that organization would be great. It would not be government. Couldn't tax, couldn't legislate, wouldn't have a monopoly on anything. It would just be a private security organization with the same rights as everybody else. And I could say, I don't want to pay for your services. Either I'll defend myself or I think they do a better job over there, whatever. when you take away everything evil about government, you don't government anymore. And I admit that for years, I tried to describe a government that was legitimate and moral and still government. It took me years to realize when it gets to be legitimate, it stops being authority and government, and then it's just humanity. So I'm all for humanity and not for violent domination. So anyway, right there.
What do you think about institutions which are non-governmental but still operate by methods of domination, authoritarian domination? So, for example, like the mental hospital that use coercive capitalism.
The question is about institutions that aren't government that still use authoritarian domination. Examples of mental hospitals. Mental hospitals sort of tie into government as things are now, because they can say, well, we declared you insane or whatever, and by this law, we get to put you in a cage and do what we want to you. And I would never claim that no individual institution other than government would ever try to be violent and dominate people. The thing is, if people don't recognize authority, then people would recognize such institutions as being immoral and would either avoid them or resisting, depending on what it took to make it not happen. And there are gray areas that are hard to say. If one is insanity. If somebody is actually, they're so out of touch with reality that they're running around and killing other people, and they don't even, they're actually imagining that other people are evil because there's something actually wrong in their head. Well, I would like to avoid killing them, but I would more like to avoid them killing somebody else. And then there's the uncomfortable question. And again, I'm not for a moment saying there aren't uncomfortable questions in our government. There still will be. The uncomfortable question is, all right, what's the minimum amount of force we can use against this person so we stop hurting other people? And for me, the first step in the solution is the mentality. Don't imagine anybody to be authority, whether it's an institution or government. The vast majority of these days is either government directly or something influenced by government. Linked in with government authority. A million institutions are like that. I mean, the medical industry. We make $1 gazillion selling these pharmaceuticals, and if somebody comes along and says, well, I have a remedy that's really cheap and seems to work really well, and they say, hey, government, can you outlaw that, please? I mean, the fact that there's actually been discussion of, we think you should need a doctor's prescription to have vitamin C. Those doctors are the guy at the front door. They are not there for your benefit if they want you to have their holy permission to get vitamin C. They are the enemy and they are the bad guy, and the only reason they're doing it is because there's a government there for them to use. And it's the same thing with medical institutions and a bunch of other things. I would draw the distinction between, there are private organizations, and here's something that people love to sort of muddle in their heads, like evil corporations. First of all, corporations are created by the state. There can still be big businesses, and they can still be run by greedy bastards, but in a free society, all they can do is offer to sell you something. And it's one thing that people get muddled in their head about is that if some business comes along and says, I will pay you $1 a day to do 10 hours of hard manual labor, he's not oppressing you. If you can say no without him attacking you, he's not oppressing you. If you can't say no without him attacking you, he's government. And if all you have to do is say, no, that deal sucks, I'm not going to do that. Then he is not oppressing you. He can be a free butthead, but he can't do anything to you if all he can do is give you an offer that you can say no. Now, again, that's an example of how big business will often, grab ties with government and control all the land in some country and say, you can either work for us or starve to death because you don't get any land and you don't get any of this and you don't get any of that. If the evil big business then uses force to eliminate your other options and then gives you a bad deal, that's oppression. That's unjust. But if he just comes along and says, I have a really bad deal to offer you, well, what happens if I don't go for it? Nothing. Okay, and you're just kind of obnoxious, so you're not an oppressor. There's nothing immoral about that. You're just kind of stupid, and I know it's not. So again, so many of even the secondary oppressions and injustices depend upon government power, or they don't even exist, even when the oppressor happens to be private, or appear private, like the big nasty corporations. Like I always say, take those big nasty corporations, take away their ties to government to see how big and nasty they are the next week, when they don't have this massive armed force of authoritarian thugs doing their bidding, when all they can do is offer to sell you something. And if they say, guess what, we own the whole continent just because you say so, and the other people say, no, you don't, you've been here, we live here, go away. Corporation goes, oh, darn, we don't have an army, we just have. And even the private armies have to be like authorized by government and have the cooperation and tolerance of government. You know, things like Blackwater and the nasty mercenaries. People say, well, what about them? I say, well, guess who they almost always work for? The government, who says, all right, you're allowed to go and terrorize these people, both in this country and other countries. So often the injustices that even appear private to begin with, you follow the tentacles back and they come to the government. Because without that, without the ability to violently dominate people, I'm not sure if somebody offers me, if I can say that.
What you do currently live under the state or surrounded by people who have adopted the illusion of the state, what does the individual do when someone comes to the door, like one of their enforcers, one of their collection agents, one of their regulators? What recourse do we have in order to confront that? Civil disobedience, opting out? Is it just as simple as just stop participating and try to encourage other people to do likewise? What's our recourse?
Right. The question is basically, since we do live in a society where people do believe in government, there is this big, powerful thing, because people will carry out its orders and enforce its will, what do we do? Now, if you're the only one who gets that this isn't legitimate, well, the SWAT team at your front door, we do in a world where there are people willing to commit oppression. And again, I would say the first step is an answer that everybody in the island scenario would understand. Like I use the example of, okay, we just found out the island's the next island over, there's 30, 40 of us, there's 400 cannibals on the other island, they're headed over and they're going to eat us. They outnumber us, so maybe they don't try democracy, that's irrelevant. We'll just vote to eat us and then eat us. But what do we do about it? If we are outnumbered by the people who advocate violence, what do? The first thing is you don't, self-preservation isn't a sin. If the guy shows up at your door, if the choices are hand over some money or die, you might want to choose to hand over some money. Ultimately, the answer is changing the mentality of the people. And we don't get to the final answer to the problem until enough people understand that. In the meantime, everybody has the right of self-defense. And this is a thing I've written about and made videos about and by lots of people. Because I've talked about the use of forcible defense against government aggressors who have a law that says they're allowed to. I made a video called When Should You Shoot a Cop, which freaked out bunch of people. And it looks back in time and says, look through history how often the law enforcers were the ones committing mass murder. Now, if you really want to tell me that it's never okay to resist an aggressor as long as some politician or law saying it's okay. What Mao did, what Stalin did, what Hitler did, what Pol Pot did, they legalized it first because they were authority. We're allowed to do this, you were down.
You forgot Obama.
And Obama and every other president in this country's history. But, so yeah, there is that problem that if you're the only one who knows you're free, it's going to be kind of dangerous. And you still have the right to defend yourself. And in certain cases, you might not want to, because self-preservation might be a better idea than dying in a blaze of glory. And that's the line that, my line in a few places, to do things that I will not let them do. I would forcibly resist even if it means I die. But I don't tell other people where to draw that line. I do tell people, if you haven't even thought about that line, or if you don't have a line, you are absolutely a slave. If they can do anything they want to you and you will never resist, you're already a slave. Your line might be nowhere in line, but you better have a line or you're already doomed. You won't ever be free because you don't even think you should be free because you already think it's evil to defend yourself if the aggressor is lost. So, I just tell what my line is. People better have a line or, you don't get free. Basically, if you're a slave who thinks you're supposed to be a slave, you will be a slave forever. And one of the things, one of the most amazing things I've ever read is the works of Frederick Douglass, who was a slave, and to me, the impressive thing was not that he physically escaped slavery, it was that he mentally escaped it. And to read his accounts of how a lot of the slaves were convinced that they were supposed to be slaves and actually viewed runaway slaves as thieves for stealing themselves from the master. And most people go, how could anyone do that? And I say, you can try to be a law-abiding taxpayer, and you have scores for people who try not to pay. Guess what? You're the slave who hates the other slave who tried to run away. And you him as the thief for trying not to be robbed. It's still you. They changed the terminology, but they kept the lie, and you still fall for it. And when that lie goes away, and enough people do it, resisting is really easy. You ignore them. Until then, things are likely to get ugly. Because when a certain number of people are willing to stand up to the right and watch people aren't, it usually ends in a violent conflict of one kind or another. And that's why what I focus on is trying to get people's minds to change, because that ugly thing that's going to happen in between is not going to be fun for anybody. I think the U.S. empire is falling. I think a lot of nasty things are going to happen. But ultimately, what I care about is what happens on the other side, and that depends entirely on how many people actually understand and want freedom. I don't care if they hate this particular regime. That doesn't matter the slightest to me. We've gone through cycles of regimes forever. What matters is when the cycle ends, is people choose freedom.
Oh, and last thing you guys do is the last thing you said is, is like, that's why I think that we're still in the kind of education phase of trying to, if you took out government today, we'd just be back in the same boat,
Yes.
But what I was going to say is that a lot of those in my experience, a lot of those gray area questions, about anarchism come from the fact that your earlier point, because everybody thinks, anarchism, then everybody goes back to being cavemen or something. But how, I guess I wanted to push maybe a question or statement, maybe I want to hear your voice on it, like how a lot of those problems get fixed with, like, voluntary economics, how big is that? Everybody, not just economics being money, but just within trade and interaction with people. And so, what's your statement or, any voice about what that is and how to explain it?
Right. I don't know that I can possibly paraphrase it. Anybody who wasn't here doesn't get to know the question. People have a lot of power, even if they don't forcibly resist. Even if, by just the way they treat other people, the way they trade, the way they spend their money, the way they live, even a minority of people can have a pretty big impact. And a few examples that come to mind is, I look forward to the day when nobody is comfortable being a tax collector, because even just half of the people they meet think they're the root of all evil. Because if half the people you may think they're the root of all evil, you might consider a career change. And that's actually been a major problem for the IRS for decades, that it's really hard to keep your staff. They have a really fast turnover rate because they get the job and find out everybody hates them. And everybody should hate them. Because ostracizing thieves is a good thing. And again, even if they don't care morally, if they have to be faced every day in and day out with angry people being happy about them and robbing them, or just people in general saying, "Ew, you work for the IRS, you go over there, I don't want to have anything to do with you," that's very powerful. And same thing with cops or soldiers or any organization that uses the initiation of violence. If everyone around them condemns them, they feel a major pressure, whatever their own moral is, they feel a major pressure to stop doing that. And that's why I think it's really important, and there are certain things that are trained into us that the people in power know they have to really solidly train these certain things in. Like, of course I support the troops. I don't support the troops. If you're a soldier for any government, you're the bad guy, quit and go home. And the thing is, if everyone in the country said that, nobody would be in the U.S. military. It doesn't mean nobody would defend us. Because if somebody invaded, I know lots and lots of people who aren't in the military who would say, well, I would definitely be one of the ones ready to forcibly defend against an actual invasion. But these are just religious things, and the way people are trained into nationalism and patriotism, and feel this deep, profound pride, because you have to train people into that to get them to keep going along with it. Because imagine And it's really sad, and I do feel for soldiers who have good intentions and go off and do it. And Vietnam is just a really, really sad testament to what authority does to all the good people. The people who went over, the people who protested, everybody involved. People go over, it's like, well, I thought I was going over to like fight for freedom and justice or something or other, my country at least. I came back and everybody hated me. A bunch of evil stuff happened over there that I was not proud of. And the same thing with the Iraq War and every other war. And thankfully, there are now a lot of soldiers that come out and say, I joined up to do good stuff, and I figured out we're actually the bad guys. They're the bad guys too. We're not the only bad guys, but I don't think adding some more bad guys to the equation was really the answer. And I come back and a lot of people hate me, and that's kind of uncomfortable. And the suicide rate among soldiers is amazingly just horrible. And it isn't, and again, I offend people by saying this, but I don't care. I don't think it's because I saw really horrible things. If I saw something really horrible, my first thought is not, I'm going to kill myself. If I did something really horrible, my first thought would be, I should not be on this planet if I'm capable of that. And I believe a lot of military suicides are that. And I know a bunch of soldiers who say, yes, the suicides are because of that. You can see horrible things that can really mess you up and weird you out. You don't want to kill yourself because somebody else did something evil. You want to kill yourself because you did something evil. And it's a very, horrible that happens at all. I love the fact that we now have the internet so that lots and lots of soldiers can come out and say, I joined up for good reasons, I thought we were the good guy, and then at one point I suddenly noticed, holy smokes, I'm that evil thing that the world needs protecting from. And so I quit. And, to any soldier, I would much rather that instead of killing yourself, you did the braver thing, which is come out and say, I was wrong. I was one of the bad guys, and I'm sorry, and I will never do that again, and I will try to talk other people out of doing that, of being soldiers, of joining the military, of being the police. That is a far braver thing than just taking your own life. If you want to fix what you did, make it so the next guy with good intentions doesn't fall for the same lie.
Okay, two things, one comment, one question. We shouldn't get mixed up between the politicians and the government. We don't elect the government, we elect the politicians. Politicians have been governed for a very, very long time, since World War II. Politicians are the public relations agency for the government, and it doesn't matter which public relations agency they use. They will rubber stamp into law bills that have been decided and drafted by people in secret elsewhere a long time before they're passed from Congress, unreadable bills, and nobody reads them, they just overstamp them into law. So let's not mix that one up, and let's not call the whole process democracy either, because I know you have to get kind of through that one very fast, I understand, but they're very different things. The question I have is, if an authoritarian society meets a relatively free society, I'll give you a real historical example. Crazy Horse and his Lakota, a very free society, was up against the U.S. military for the second half of 1876, after the recon, and for most of 1877. Now the U.S. military, absolute hierarchy, orders from the top. The Lakota, they were invited to fight the war or leave the band. But somewhere along the line, Crazy Horse and some of the elders said, no, we're under too much threat, you can't leave. And some families did try to sneak away at night. So Crazy Horse and the warriors came to those people, and they took their lodge poles and they burned them, and they took their horses and they confiscated them. My question, was that wrong? Was that normally wrong? What they did? What was the alternative to the second part of the question?
I don't, let me back up. Listen, he made the distinction between government and the politicians, and I'll cover that after we cover this. And he brought the example of when a authoritarian empire, whatever you want to call it, is up against a relatively free society. He used the example of the Indians, Crazy Horses, who resisted for a while. And he talked about the example of the Lakota who said, let's kind of sneak away, we don't really want to play this. they were actually punished by their own kind for running away. The answer is the moral yes, because then crazy horses, whoever become the aggressors. Now, if I'm in this room and somebody is saying they're going to come attack me, and the rest of you go, I have nothing to do with this, and walk away, I don't have the right to attack you. I can say, you bunch of chicken turds, thanks a lot. If I attack you, I'm just as bad as the guy coming to attack me. And the thing is, a free society does not guarantee the good guys win. And that's one of the biggest things, is what people want government for, is it guarantees that the good guy will win. The thing is, government always guarantees the bad guy will win. Lack of governance doesn't guarantee anything in any direction, because maybe you have a giant, in that case, a giant authoritarian empire with lots of soldiers and lots of guns, and the soldiers will blindly do what they're told and commit genocide, which basically happened in this country to the American Indians. And there is no magic guarantee that the good guys will win if they believe in freedom, which is, again, why it's a numbers game. What if all those soldiers for the U.S. cavalry and military and the rest of them said, these people are already living here, I don't think it's okay to attack them just because some guy in a house over there wrote down that, yeah, they don't get to be here anymore. Again, the answer was for the enforcers to wake up, and in that case, obviously, they didn't. And there was, mass murder and forced eviction where people have lived for thousands of years. But I don't ever think, let's add a new authority and a new aggression is ever the answer, because then you have two evils to choose between.
But sometimes doesn't have to fight discipline. I know it's an emergency situation and it should always be temporary. Another example comes to mind is a ship or a boat, right? A boat is an emergency situation. A meeting, in a way, is kind of an emergency situation. You can only have one person speaking at a time, so you have to give authority, which we've kind of given to you as chairman of the meeting.
But you did it, and I can demonstrate it. Everybody here give me $1,000. I don't have the right to rule. You're here voluntarily.
You're not having a meeting, not the robbers.
But that's not, like, the only authority here is an authority which is the people who own the place said we're allowed to be here, and the people who arranged it said, I'm going to be the one standing up here. I can't do anything to your person and your wealth except say, according to people who own the place, you don't get to be there.
Authority is just a name for psychological power. That's all it is. It's what illusion.
Yeah. In a very broad sense, but there's a big difference between saying, well, right now you're the guy talking and saying, you have the moral right to rule us. There's a gigantic distinction.
I think voluntary is different.
Yeah, it's voluntary. Yeah. We're all here voluntarily. Does anybody threaten with violence if they didn't come here? Anybody threaten with violence if they didn't come here?
You didn't force us to give it to you. We gave it to you for the length of the meeting.
Right, or walk out the window. You're not walking out the window. Yeah, exactly. If nobody locks the door. So, yeah, the distinction is it voluntary or involuntary? And the involuntary, even if it's for some supposedly noble good, and an example I like to use that makes, everybody gets the answer right is, if I had the power to violently make all of you exercise for 2 hours a day and eat a healthy diet, you cannot deny that it would benefit you in health ways. Does anybody think I have the right to do that? No. Why not? It would benefit you. It would benefit the common good and the individual. Because you own yourself, and I don't have the right to commit aggression even for your own good. So I have to sit here and let you eat unhealthy and not get exercise. For me, I don't get to make you be what you should be for your own good. That's all true.
We already are.
Let's see, you and then you.
Okay, a popular view that's been spreading through the resistance in general here, certain everything, is you lose your freedom the second you fight for it. It's something I kind of disagree with. I wonder what your take on it is.
You talk about the meme of the sort of saying thing of you lose your freedom as soon as you fight for it. There's definitely that balance when it's a minority of people who actually believe in freedom and want it, and the first guy who stands up is usually the guy the tank runs over. And the thing is, again, on a practical basis or on a moral basis, self-preservation is no sin. The thing is, if everybody is concerned with just themselves, I don't want to make waves, but I read an article about this. If everybody says, well, I'm not going to be first to stand up, then you get mass murder because this empire gets huge because nobody did anything. The downside is if you're the first one to stand up, you're the first one to get shot down. So there's a truth to that. The thing is there are lots of in-between ways to resist that are smaller or sneakier or whatever. And each person has to decide, what are you willing to risk and for what cause. The thing is that everybody just, I'm in my own business and take care of myself, look out for number one, and not make waves. That's when authoritarianism gets really powerful. And if lots of people say, I'm going to cause trouble and you might hurt some of us, you might hurt me, you might kill me. I mean, I go around and give these talks. I'm sure there's lots of people in power who don't particularly like what I'm saying. I'm not that hard to kill. I'd be really easy to kill. So far they haven't, thankfully. And I'm not going to shut up until they do. And that's the line I draw. And I don't suggest other people draw that line. But again, the mentality to me is the main thing. Because the more people have it, the less risk there is to any individual. But I do think if you're not willing to risk anything for freedom, just kind of get out of the way to people who are actually going to make the world a better place. To be rude about it.
Now that you, what was the explanation offered to you on why you were welcome at Fort Benning and Chris Cantwell wasn't, even though you essentially made the same point in the same meeting?
I wasn't welcome. They didn't ban me. They didn't invite me back. I also didn't ask to go back. The question was about why I was banned from Fort Fest and Chris Cantwell was there were some other things. I'll be real quick about this drama is sort of in big scheme of things I don't care, but it's a good question. The drama of them saying we don't want to be associated with somebody who talks about killing cops. I said, what on me? I just gave a talk last year at WorkFest called Why Speak of Violence, which specifically talked about the fact that if you can't even discuss forcible resistance against an aggressor, you're just talking about how loud you're going to whine as a slave. If there's no point at which you're going to say, I'm not going to go along with this, you lose. You already completely lose. And I think there were personal things, and there were other incidents that didn't show up in their excuse. And Chris Cantwell, is very blunt, potentially rude, and admits it, and it's like, I want to fight with him. So there was, behind the scenes drama, but I do think it was hugely consistent. And there was this discussion of it at WorkFest, although it was at Alt Expo, like same place, same time, but not officially a WorkFest event, where we discussed that. And the funny thing is that was discussed more than at any other WorkFest, because they said, don't talk about that. Don't talk about that. And they want to be seen as more moderate and as not, but if your goal is to be accepted by a society that condones mass aggression, you lose. Like, the world doesn't ever change because you say what other people are comfortable with hearing. The world only changes when you say a truth that other people don't want to hear.
To follow that up, I think that, in their attempt to mute the point of Chris Cantwell, they ended up with, several hundred wanted posters all around the campground. Yeah, a ton of attention brought to it.
And they made him louder, right? They made the message louder, they made more people talk about it. So it doesn't work well when you tell, voluntary as to what you can talk about.
Okay, I've got a couple of questions. The first one is, what is your opinion about compulsory education for children and
people?
That was easy.
When there's a social imperative to work for a big corporation, because the only way of getting money is either from that big corporation, from a corporation, or from the government. What do you think about those institutions both being coercive and institutionally authoritarian?
Okay, the two questions were, the first was about compulsory education, which is basically imprisoned authoritarian indoctrination. I think it's completely immoral. There's actually, helped with some videos that Jersey the Outlaws done. One is called The Prison by Any Other Name. It is about compulsory education and how it isn't teaching people to think, it's teaching people to accept slavery. So my short answer is it's immoral. You don't get to imprison people just because they're little. The other question was about when corporations or governments, when you're sort of stuck with the choice of you have to work for them or you kind of starve. Again, and a lot of that has to do with land ownership. Like a government will show up and say, everything from this line to the line 5,000 miles over there, it's ours. You don't own any of it. We're going to give it to our huge corporation buddies. And unless you want to starve to death, you don't have any land. You don't get to farm. You don't get to hunt, gather, do anything. If you want to live on that land that we just declared we own, you have to pay us rent and property taxes. And golly gee, it happens that thanks to us, the only option you have is to work for our buddies in this giant corporation. Again, they can't force that unless they have the government there to do it. And so they get intertwined, and people blame the corporations that often miss. And, using government to do that is completely immoral. So what the corporations do is immoral. People miss the fact that they can't do that if there isn't the government there. Like, if a private company showed up and said, we own all of Argentina, and everybody living there said, no, you don't, the corporation goes, that didn't work. I'm the CEO, what am I going to do? Go door to door and tell them you have to, unless they have a big, powerful government that they can convince to enforce their claims. Again, all they can do is offer jobs or offer to sell goods, and all of a sudden they say, no, on my own, I can work for somebody else, I can do whatever. If you're not ruling out my other options, you're not oppressing me. So there's a follow-up.
I was wondering how the mere elimination of government would work to correct incredible wealth disparity prevalent.
Two things. The question is about how removal of government would deal with the huge wealth disparity. On the one hand, I don't care about wealth disparity. If somebody else got ridiculously wealthy off of voluntary exchange, which means every time you had an interaction with anybody else that made them that rich, they wanted to do it, I don't care. If somebody has $20 billion from trading with people who wanted to trade with them, I don't mind. And there's a word for minding, it's called coveting. And for Christians, it's a sin. I'm not a Christian, but I think it's the envy that drives a lot of government redistribution things is worse than the greed of the guy who wants tons of money, if he gets it voluntarily. However, if they don't have the government to give them monopolies and giant advantages, I think naturally a free market tends to even out a lot more than it does now.
What about the wealth that's not dependent on the market, like land?
Oh, yeah, land ownership. Right now, I don't want to get into this too much, but the concept of homesteading. Somebody doesn't get to step on the continent and go, this is mine. Anybody who lives between that and 5,000 miles over there has to pay me rent. It's bogus. Nobody has the right to do that. The concept that land ownership comes from homesteading, from using it. Like, I built a farm here, I built my house here. Nobody else is here. I can kill somebody and then do it. And having just come on a train across the country, I can tell you there's a lot of unused land here, but the government claims all of it. So you don't get to say, I'm going to live here. In fact, even if it gives you the land, it says you have to keep paying us for the privilege of owning your own land. We call it property tax.
They own all.
And that's immoral too. And so right now, without government, there's lots and lots of land, and it's not a desolate wasteland, that people have the absolute right to go to and say, I'm just going to live here. So build a house here. I mean, Frontier days was basically that. Well, there's nobody here. I'm going to build a house, and then it's fine, and this is my land. Now, if you have 1,000 people in 2 square miles, it gets really problematic. So far, we're not at that. But yeah, when governments find themselves, or corporations by way of government, say, we own this giant tract of land just because we said so, now you have to pay for the privilege of standing on it. Yeah, that's bogus. It's like me saying, by the way, I own the planet. You are going to leave if you want. If you want to stay on this planet, you each have to give me $100 a month to pay for rent for my planet. And that's basically what every government does, only once people believe it when government does it. But no, you don't get to just throw in a giant amount of land by saying you do. So that's sort of the libertarian answer to that.
Just a quick comment. I'm just totally amazed. For centuries, they've had governments. They've always failed, and we just keep doing the insanity over and over and over again. It gets kind of disappointing sometimes.
Yeah, it's talking about the fact that we do government over and over and over again for thousands of years, and people keep trying and keep thinking, if we just somehow arrange this right, it'll work, and people just, they never seem to learn the underlying problem. And we go from one nasty empire to another one because people think, and this is sort of cliche, I say it all the time, I'm going to keep saying it all the time, people think the problem is the guy who's on the throne. The problem has never been the guy on the throne. The problem has always been there's a throne to be on. And if you knock that guy off the throne, the next guy in line is going to be a sociopath. And you look how often in history you have a revolution against one nasty authoritarian regime, and you get a new nasty authoritarian regime. And to me, one of the most useful things the founding fathers of this country did was demonstrate what a bad idea limited government is. It was the most limited attempt to ever make a government, and it turned into the most powerful authoritarian empire the world has ever known. If that doesn't show you that limited government doesn't fucking work, I don't know what will.
I get a fucking A for that one, too.
When people... So and it is depressing, like reading Schindler's List and the Diary of Anne Frank and realizing the main opposition to the Nazis were the communists. And to me, that's just so depressing. Really, your answer to a big collectivist authoritarian regime.
Well, there was a third party. There were the mild socialists.
The mild. The moderation. Yeah, that's right. No moderation. The fact that that's all they can think of, just being able to recognize one evil, what do you do? Like if somebody's stomping on you, being able to say, I don't like this. Well, no kidding, who does? The thing is, if you got the chance to be the stomper, to tell the stomper what to do, would you? Everybody who votes and believes in government would. That's what has to stop. I don't just want this guy not stomping on me. I want no one stomping on anybody. I mean, every nasty tyrannical regime started by fighting against some other injustice. Right. What Hitler railed against were real evils that should have been railed against and should have been fought against, only the people were in the authoritarian mindset. They replaced one with another. Same thing with Mao, same thing with Stalin, same thing with the U.S.
Usually worse, too.
Yeah, and it ends up worse in the long run. But luckily now, after however many thousands of years to go around in circles, there are more and more people, and it's accelerating amazingly in the last few years, who recognize, hey, how about not have the throne there anymore? Because every time you put somebody up there, he's an evil bastard to stop some people commit mass murder. Take the throne away. Stop putting a new guy on it. And
thanks, Larkin Rose. Yeah, really, kind of gives it some summary, doesn't it? I've got about 20 more minutes of that, but I think we'll stop for there. Yeah, I just got back home, got home to Arkansas, close to home. Anyway, so I've got a lot to do. Glad to be home. It was quite a good bus ride. Missed Vegas already. Had a great night Saturday, a great afternoon. Met a lot of great people. Austin Thomas, Larkin Rose, of course, and so many other people that made that possible. I think we'll finish this up in another night, and like to give some credit to some folks. And I'll tell you what I'll do. Y'all stay tuned, and well, not right now, but later I will give you some links for some good recording of the event there. And my quality is low, but you know, hey, I'm getting out there and taking a look and a listen, and been enjoying it. So I'm back home in the hills now in Arkansas. Met some good people on the road on the trip. I always love the trip. The journey's great. And of course, with conversation, you'll find people that will disappoint you and others that will give us great hope. So I had the opportunity the day I left Vegas to talk to a Homeland Security agent and a state police, and I kind of led them with some questions, and I'll talk about some more of that later. my buddy fired up a joint. I asked him, I said, so what about, what if a fellow's to fire up a joint? Oh, no, can't do that. It's against the law. But anyways, not 30 feet away. I couldn't back down from the dare. He lit it up, and we smoked right there in front of him. I thought, wow, what are we doing here? But I guess sometimes you got to make a point. And the point was made. Hey, listen, thanks, Phyllis Sinclair, always for At Last, my motto here. Used to be the intro, but always will be. And Jaja's going to take us out. Radioactive. Stay tuned. Double Cross. Always great radio coming up next. Drew and Chuck, maybe David, maybe Colby, and really great radio over there. But I'm bugging out. I'm going to bed. I've been up 2 days. Wonderful trip. Had me little cat naps along the way, but 2 days and 2 nights. I am ready to go to bed. And so sorry about the beginning here for the first 15-odd minutes. Skype. The evil Skype. Yes, indeed. But, hey, I've got some really, really great stories, and love it. Hey, Captain, thank you, Captain Gringo, for coming to the rescue. Hello, who is it? Somebody's calling, so we're coming out here. Jordan Page is, he says, listen, and that intro's Double Cross Radio. And here we go. Jaja, take us out, bro. Love and peace, y'all. Stay tuned to UC1.
The USA is crumbling. Y'all sit back, dumb as shit. The mass invasion, the home invasions. The CPS is coming to snatch your babies. These confiscations, the conversations. They're operating within the zones we're trading. We're in the matrix, now we're totally raided. They infiltrated, finally the devil gave in. If you can't hear me, then pump up the volume. Make Donald, Bin Laden, Osama, Obama. Bring up something real, legalize marijuana. Everything on a bong hit is as blonde as Madonna. Radioactive, intergalactic, counterattacking.